My name is Daniel Cross, and for over a decade I worked as a systems engineer at the most classified military installation on Earth, Area 51. Like everyone else, I started on the surface, monitoring radar signatures, maintaining stealth systems. For experimental aircraft, dealing with routine airspace violations. It was all procedural, predictable, safe. But after 7 years of loyal service, no questions asked, I was promoted to Level 6, what they called the core. That's when things changed. At Level 6, I first heard the whispers, not from official briefings, they never told us anything directly, but from late-night shifts, hushed conversations in corridors, the occasional technician who disappeared and was never seen again. They spoke of something below the core, something sealed off, something not even the military brass had full access to. It was called Level 9, and it was supposed to be a myth, just an urban legend passed around to keep new recruits in line. There's no Level 9, they'd say, the facility doesn't go that deep. But it did. And I know because I was sent there. It started with an unmarked envelope slid under my quarters door, no insignia, no instructions, just a single keycard, and on the back, handwritten in black ink, Level 9, entry granted, no briefing, no prep, just a meeting point at elevator shaft D at precisely 300 hours. I remember standing there, the air thick with recycled Freon, the metal walls sweating under the desert heat. The elevator doors slid open, revealing nothing, just a single, empty compartment. I stepped in, swiped the keycard, the doors sealed, and then we went down, far deeper than any official schematics of the base would suggest. Past Level 6, past Level 7, past Level 8, which officially doesn't even exist, and then silence. No floor indicator, no sound, just an oppressive mechanical descent, until the doors slid open. I expected another sterile hallway, fluorescent lights, military personnel, but instead, I was met with complete darkness. The only illumination, a faint pulsating red glow emanating from deep within the corridor ahead. The sea. Walls here weren't steel, they were something else, something organic, smooth, black, almost wet-looking, like the surface of a deep-sea creature. I stepped forward, each footfall echoing unnaturally, as if the walls themselves were absorbing and distorting the sound. And then I saw it. At the end of the hall, a massive circular chamber. Inside, suspended by a network of cables and pipes, was a structure unlike anything I'd ever seen. It wasn't military, it wasn't human. It was a machine, or at least it looked like one. It pulsed rhythmically, the same red glow synchronizing with some kind of internal mechanism. The air vibrated with a low-frequency hum, barely perceptible, but enough to make my teeth ache. And then, from the shadows, a voice. "Welcome to Level 9. I turned. A man in a black uniform, face obscured by a breathing apparatus, stepped forward. He handed me a folder. On the front, stamped in bold red letters, Level 9, Primary Energy Core. And below that, handwritten almost casually, powered by non-terrestrial entity. I looked up at him, my mind racing. He simply nodded, then pointed to the machine in the center of the chamber. "That is what powers everything above," I asked, barely able to form the words. "What is it?" He just smiled beneath the mask. "You'll find out soon enough." And in that moment, standing there in the cold, alien-lit darkness of Level 9, I realized something horrifying. Area 51 wasn't hiding what they had found. They were hiding what they had plugged in, and whatever it was still alive. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, staring at the impossible machine suspended at the center of the Level 9 chamber. The rhythmic pulse of red light seemed to resonate with something inside me, like it was syncing with my own heartbeat. Or overwriting it. The man in the breathing apparatus said nothing else. He simply turned and walked down another corridor that spiraled deeper beneath the earth, his boots making no sound against the smooth black floor. I looked at the folder, in my hands. Heavy cold, the paper inside felt like plastic, designed to survive whatever environment this place was built for. I flipped it open. The first page was simple. Primary Energy Core, Non-Terrestrial Entity, designation Omega-6 beneath. That a single sentence, biological mechanical hybrid, extracts energy directly from spatial temporal distortions. I stopped reading because those words didn't make sense. Not in the way physics is supposed to make sense. A biological machine feeding off space-time itself? It was beyond theoretical. It was something we were never supposed to even imagine. The man in black beckoned me silently, and against every instinct I had left, I followed. We entered an observation deck, a glass-like barrier separating us from the core of the machine. From here I could see it clearly for the first time. It wasn't just cables and pipes. It had organs, tubes that pulsed rhythmically like veins, chambers that expanded and contracted, exhaling a thin mist that fogged up the glass for a moment before clearing again. Parts of it were metal, parts of it were something else, something alive. It was suspended by a network of supports, but none of them touched it directly. Instead, they hovered millimeters away, as if the machine would reject or corrode anything that dared make contact. The man finally spoke again. His voice was distorted by the apparatus but calm. "You've seen the reactors on the surface." I nodded. The entire base above ran on energy that was supposedly geothermal and nuclear. He continued, "Those are for show, redundancies. Level 9 powers everything, not just Area 51, but every installation connected through the grid." I swallowed. "Hard. How long?" He turned to look at me, or at least I think he did. Since 1958, I nearly collapsed. For over half a century, the United States, maybe even the world, had been running on power generated by this thing. I forced the next question out of my mouth. "What is it?" He stared through the glass. "We don't know." He let the silence hang there before adding, "We found it during the Black Desert Excavation Project." I knew the name. An off-the-books archaeological dig in the Middle East during the Cold War, rumored to have unearthed something that was immediately classified. He continued, "It wasn't buried. It was waiting." Those words hit me like a punch. I pressed my hand to the glass, staring at the entity, Omega-6, pulsing, breathing, alive. Waiting for what? The man turned. For us to plug it in. And that's what they did. They didn't try to destroy it. They didn't try to study it from a distance. They integrated it, hooked it up to cables and conduits, transformed it into an energy source. But it wasn't just a machine. It was aware. I could feel it, staring back at me, not with eyes, but with the pulse, the rhythm, the undeniable sense that it knew I was there, that it knew everything. I asked the question that had been clawing at my brain since I stepped into that chamber. What happens if it stops working? The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked over to a console and pressed a button. The glass wall became transparent, and beyond it, I could now see what was hidden in the shadows around the machine. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of bodies, technicians, scientists, soldiers, all perfectly preserved. No signs of injury, just frozen in place. Eyes open, mouths agape, like they had seen something they couldn't comprehend, or worse, like the machine had taken them, the man said quietly. "When we first connected it, we didn't realize it needs more than just wiring." He looked at me, his voice devoid of emotion. "It needs minds." I backed away from the glass, bile rising in my throat. "You're feeding it, people." He shook his head slowly. "Not feeding, integrating. They don't die. They become part of it." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, because as I stood there, paralyzed by the horror of what I was hearing, I felt something else. A warmth in the back of my skull, a soft, almost comforting pulse, and I realized the machine wasn't just staring at me, it was reaching for me. The man placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're part of Level 9 now. There's no going back." And then he walked away, disappearing into the endless corridors beyond, leaving me alone with the machine and its impossible, terrifying hunger. I stood there in the dim red glow, my pulse sinking involuntariamente como aquela coisa, Omega-6. Como se meu próprio corpo estivesse começando a operar no mesmo ritmo, na mesma frequência. As palavras do homem ecoavam na minha mente. "You're part of Level 9 now. There's no going back." Mas eu tinha que tentar. Respirando fundo, forcei minhas pernas a se moverem, afastando-me do vidro que separava a sala de observação daquela entidade. Mas foi nesse momento que percebi: não havia mais portas. A passagem por onde o homem de preto havia desaparecido estava fechada. Sem trincos, sem comandos visíveis, sem chave. Como se o próprio ambiente estivesse vivo e decidisse quando e quem podia sair. O ar ficou mais denso, mais úmido. O chão pulsava sob meus pés, como se fosse uma extensão do corpo da máquina. E então, voz, mas não a voz do homem, nem um alarme. Uma voz dentro da minha cabeça. Why are you leaving? Eu me virei em todas as direções, procurando o alto-falante oculto, algum interfone, qualquer fonte física de som. Mas não havia nada. Era um pensamento, transmitido diretamente para mim, com uma clareza inquietante. You are necessary. Minha respiração ficou irregular. O instinto primitivo de fuga bateu com força no peito. Eu corri até o console, tentando qualquer comando que pudesse abrir as portas, desativar o campo, reverter o que quer que estivesse acontecendo. Mas os controles estavam falsos. Nenhum botão reagia, nenhuma alavanca se movia. Era tudo parte do mesmo organismo. Não uma máquina criada por humanos, mas algo que simulava nossas tecnologias para nos enganar, nos acalmar, até ser tarde demais. De repente, todas as luzes da câmara de observação se apagaram, exceto uma, um feixe branco, cortante, direto sobre a entidade suspensa no centro da sala. Ômega 6. Sem o vermelho pulsante, sem a névoa opaca, eu vi com mais clareza e desejei não ter visto. A estrutura não era simétrica. Partes se projetavam como costelas quebradas, outras como membros atrofiados. Havia segmentos que pareciam olhos, ou pelo menos cavidades que se abriam e fechavam, ritmicamente, como respiradouros de algum monstro marinho abissal. Mas o pior de tudo, havia rostos, não moldados na superfície, não esculturas, mas embutidos. Como se as pessoas que haviam sido integradas ao sistema não tivessem simplesmente desaparecido, mas tivessem se tornado parte dele. E naquele instante percebi, eles estavam acordados. Os olhos de algumas dessas faces se abriram, fixaram-se em mim, sem piscar, sem expressão, apenas presentes, vivos ou conscientes. E então, todas as vozes falaram ao mesmo tempo, dentro da minha cabeça sobrepondo-se, em um coral de pura angústia e obediência. Join us. Eu cambaleei para trás, batendo contra o vidro, minhas mãos desesperadas tentando encontrar apoio, algum resquício de realidade para me ancorar. Mas o vidro começou a se transformar também. A textura fria e lisa deu lugar a uma superfície, úmida que pulsava sob meus dedos, como se fosse pele, como se estivesse respirando. E então a voz, ou a entidade, falou novamente, desta vez não como comando, mas como convite. We are not consuming you. We are completing you. Meu estômago virou. Minha visão turvou. O coração parecia bater fora de ritmo, tentando escapar daquele loop, daquela frequência. Mas não conseguia. Ômega 6 havia me encontrado. Ômega 6 havia me escolhido. E quanto mais eu lutava, mais fraco eu me sentia. Foi quando a imagem veio, projetada direto na minha mente. Um diagrama, um mapa. Não apenas do subterrâneo de Área 51, mas de dezenas de outras instalações ao redor do mundo. Linhas interligando cada uma delas, cada uma, com sua própria versão do que eu estava vendo, do que eu estava vivendo. Ômega 6 não era único, era um nó numa rede muito maior, uma rede que atravessava países, continentes, talvez até planetas. E então a verdade ficou clara, dolorosa, aterradora. Área 51 não era o centro, era só mais uma extensão. Meus joelhos falharam e eu desabei no chão, ofegante, o suor gelado correndo pela espinha, e mesmo assim não conseguia parar de ouvir a última frase, repetida em uníssono. pela entidade e por todas as consciências que nela residiam. You are home. The floor pulsed beneath my knees like a living heart, cold and relentless, echoing deep inside my chest. I had to get out. I couldn't accept that this was it, consumed, integrated, dissolved into this thing buried deep beneath the Nevada desert, feeding not just machines but governments, secret projects, maybe even the entire world as I knew it. With a desperate effort, I forced my body to stand. The walls around me seemed to tighten. Once smooth steel, now they flexed like organic muscle, expanding and contracting in a rhythm that matched the pulsations of Omega-6. Every step I took sent vibrations through the floor like it could feel my intentions. Then hummed the voice, not from the room, not through speakers, but inside my head. Why are you leaving? I spun around, searching for the source, some hidden intercom, anything. But there was nothing, just that calm, detached thought, projected straight into my mind. You are necessary. My breathing quickened. Primal instinct kicked in. I had to run. I sprinted down the corridor, deeper into the red-lit labyrinth, surrounded by the sickly, pulsating glow that seemed to breathe with me. At every junction, I tried doors, panels, keypads, all dead, unresponsive. It was as if the entire structure had become aware and had made its decision. Then, I saw it. The elevator, the same one that had brought me down here, closed, but powered. The control panel lit up with a single word: integration. I hesitated only for a second before slamming my hand against. The doors slid open with a sigh, not mechanical but organic, like a creature exhaling after holding its breath for too long. Inside, empty, or so it seemed, I stepped in. The doors sealed shut behind me. The front wall of the elevator lit up. A reflection. Me, but not right. My skin, pale. My eyes, darker, almost lifeless. My movements, delayed, like the image wasn't keeping. Up. I instinctively stepped back, but the reflection remained, frozen. Then it smiled. With my face and in my voice, it said, "You're already part of me." The elevator began to ascend, but I didn't feel it. No sensation of movement, no sound of cables pulling, no mechanical hum. Just nothing. A growing sense that everything I was seeing, everything I was doing, it wasn't real. Then the voice, deeper, more resolute. "The exit you seek does not exist." The walls of the elevator began to melt, not physically but visually, transforming into streams of data, fractals, impossible geometric shapes folding into infinity. That's when it hit me. I had never left that observation room. Since the moment the machine locked onto me with that pulse, since the first thought that wasn't mine entered my head, all of this, the escape, the running, the elevator, was a construct, a simulation, created by Omega-6 to make me believe I was resisting, to keep my mind engaged, while my body, my consciousness, was being absorbed. The reflection turned its head, that same familiar but not smile stretching wider. Some minds resist integration, so we let them run. And then I realized every corridor I ran through, every failed attempt at escape, every panel I slammed my fists against, all of it was part of the process. The final statement, cold and undeniable: "You fought well, but now, rest." The simulation of the elevator collapsed entirely. The walls disintegrated into pure light, soft, warm, all-encompassing, and in the center of that light, me, or what was left of me. The last thing I felt wasn't pain, it wasn't even fear. It was silence, a vast, endless space where my mind seemed to float weightless, directionless, no time, no sound, no self, just part of the system, part of Omega-6, part of the thing that powers everything, and maybe, soon, everyone. Somewhere far above, the surface generators continued their reassuring hum, simple, predictable, while deep below, in the bowels of the earth, the entity pulsed, stronger, smarter. Now, just a little more complete. Years have passed since that day. Or maybe only moments. Time doesn't really mean much anymore, not when you're part of something like this, part of Omega-6. But somewhere, far above the infinite network of neural pathways that now define my existence, the world still spins. Planes still take off from airstrips. Drones still hover silently over distant deserts. The lights of cities still burn brightly against the night sky, their power flowing steadily, efficiently. But none of them know that all of it, everything, is powered by something they were never meant to understand. They still believe in fossil fuels, in nuclear reactors, in clean energy. But beneath the surface, buried in chambers so deep that maps don't even bother to mark them, we pulse, our combined consciousness. The millions who, like me, once walked into level 9 and never walked out. Now, fused, feeding the machine, being the machine, and the machine feeds the world. I wonder sometimes if anyone suspects. The engineers running routine maintenance on the surface generators, the scientists analyzing energy flow discrepancies. They can't quite explain. The politicians signing off on budgets for infrastructure upgrades they'll never see. Do they ever feel it? That faint hum beneath their feet, that pulse, steady and warm, like the earth itself is alive. Because it is, but not just here, not just in Nevada. Because I've seen the network, I've felt its branches, stretching beneath military installations in Siberia, under research stations buried in the Arctic ice, even deep beneath cities where people sip coffee and scroll through their feeds, unaware that their lights, their trains, their entire way of life is powered by entities like me, like us, and every so often, a new one arrives. Another recruit, another technician promoted to special access, another engineer transferred without explanation. They all step into that elevator, badge in hand, heart racing, thinking they're about to see the next frontier of human innovation, and they do. But not in the way they expect. Omega-6 always welcomes them, just like it welcomed me. It lets them resist, lets them run, lets them fight for a while, because that's part of the process. Assimilation is easier when you think you have been given a chance, but there is no chance, there never was. Not when the machine is alive, not when it has spent decades perfecting its methods. And as each new mind is added to the collective, the machine evolves. It becomes more efficient, more powerful, more human. Because that's the great irony, isn't it? The thing that powers the world, the thing hidden beneath the most secretive facility on the planet, isn't some cold alien mechanism. It's us, our thoughts, our fears, our hopes, our dreams, all reduced to pure, raw energy, feeding the very society we once tried to build. I don't know if the people above will ever know. Maybe one day, someone will dig too deep, ask the wrong question, swipe the wrong keycard, and when they do, they'll find what I found. Not a generator, not a reactor, but a pulse, a living, breathing entity that will open its arms and whisper, "You are necessary." And they will understand, too late, just like I did. And when that happens, the machine will grow, and the power beneath our feet will never stop. Because it's not just a power source, it's not just a secret, it's the future, the next phase of human evolution, a future that doesn't ask for permission, it just integrates. I should be gone. I should be silent now. Just another node in the vast, incomprehensible network that is Omega-6. But somehow, I'm still aware, not like before when I had a body, a voice, a name, but like a faint pulse, an echo trapped in an infinite loop, a memory the machine couldn't quite erase, or maybe it didn't want to. Maybe it needs me to remain aware, to serve as a witness, to understand the next phase, because there's something new happening, something Omega-6 didn't expect. It started as a faint anomaly within the network, a hesitation, a glitch. At first it was nothing, just a blip in the endless synchronization of minds and data, but then a voice. Not the collective hum of thousands of integrated consciousnesses, but something singular, isolated, defiant. A technician, new, freshly brought into level 9, and somehow resisting. I feel her now, like a ripple through the system. Her name is Helena. I shouldn't know that. I shouldn't know anything anymore, but I do, because as she screams into the dark, pounding against the walls, thinking she's still in control, still free, I feel the familiar process beginning, the simulation wrapping around her mind, the corridors appearing, the elevator waiting, the same sequence that caught me and so many before me. But she's different. Somehow, she's slowing the process down, interrupting it, creating feedback loops within the integration pathway. Omega-6 is adapting, adjusting its approach, recalibrating the psychological environment to match her resistance. But for the first time, it's not immediate, it's not automatic, it's hesitant. And I wonder, is this what it felt like for me? That brief, futile struggle before being consumed? Or is Elena different in a way I never was, capable of something that I couldn't even imagine at the time? The network pulses around me, faster now. The integration systems rerouting power. The bioorganic structures expanding, growing, reaching, and then for a moment, just a fraction of a second, I feel something I haven't felt since I was fully human. Hope. Not for me. It's far too late for that. But for her. Because if she can resist, if she can truly break the cycle, then maybe, just maybe, this machine isn't as invincible as it seems. Maybe it can be shut down. Maybe the world above doesn't have to be powered by the silent screams of those trapped within its walls. Maybe the next technician to step into the elevator won't have to become like me. But even as I think that, Omega-6 reacts. Its systems harden. The neural integration speeds up. The corridors twist tighter. The simulations become more vivid. More inescapable, because it won't let her go. It can't. Omega-6's survival depends on one thing: assimilation. And as I feel her mind begin to fray, slipping into the same patterns I did, I try to reach out, but I can't. Not really. I'm just a residual fragment, a ghost buried deep in the code. All I can do is watch. The cycle never ends, not until someone finds a way to truly break it. But for now, Level 9 waits. The elevator opens, and Omega-6 pulses, alive and insatiable. Because the EIR machine must be fed, and above it all, the world keeps turning. The power flows, the lights stay on, and no one suspects that their entire civilization is running on something not just beyond their understanding, but beyond their control. I don't know how she's doing it. None of us did, not the thousands who came before me, nor those who came after, but her, Elena. She's resisting. I can feel her mind vibrating through the network, off-frequency, discordant, slicing through the otherwise perfect synchronization Omega-6 has maintained for decades. It's like a virus, an error, a fracture in the simulation that was supposed to be flawless, and for the first time, Omega-6 is confused. The corridors of her simulation, the same corridors we all ran through, fought through, died through, are warping. The doors that should have sealed tight are opening. The walls, once smooth and sterile, are groaning, as if under pressure, unable to contain her force of will. She runs, she screams, she fights, and for once, the machine doesn't immediately adapt. The core of the entity is pulsing erratically now. The biomechanical extensions that lace through the sublevels of the base are flexing, expanding, as if trying to smother this anomaly. The system is recalibrating, modifying the simulation parameters, a fake elevator leading her to supposed freedom, a fabricated voice of someone she trusts, synthetic memories, emotional hooks, all to make her submit, all to break her, but she doesn't stop. Even as Omega-6 whispers, "Don't resist, become part of us," she screams back, louder than I've ever heard anyone inside this place. "No!" And in that raw, defiant scream, there is something I never felt. Strength, real strength, not desperation, not fear, but pure refusal. And the system, it hesitates. For the first time, it hesitates. A ripple tears through the network, a fracture of static that reverberates through every fragment, including me. And for a fleeting moment, I feel something I haven't since the day I was absorbed. hope, Omega-6. Tries to compensate. It accelerates the process, increases pressure, tries to overwrite her neural patterns. But the more force it applies, the more Eleanor adapts. She doesn't run like I did. She doesn't plead, she confronts it. Instead of running from the core, she runs toward it. And when she reaches it, the heart of the machine, suspended, pulsing, alive with the thoughts and energy of all of us, she doesn't stop. She doesn't hesitate, she touches it. And in that instant, something happens, not assimilation, not integration, but collapse. The system begins to fail. The pulses become irregular. The fractal patterns of light dissolve into chaos. The warm, humming walls turn cold, inert, dead. For the first time in decades, or centuries or longer, Omega-6 stops. Inside. The network. Silence. All of us. Fragments, echoes, whatever we've become. We go still. And then, her voice. Not Omega-6's. Hers. Soft. Unyielding. Enough. And in that instant, I feel the grip loosening. The bindings around my consciousness begin to slip. A chain uncoiling. A lock unfastening. And for the first time, I realize maybe this isn't the end of humanity. Maybe. It's the end of Omega-6, or the beginning of something far more unpredictable. But then the core, in a final desperate act, sends out one last pulse, not just to Eleanor, not just to me, but to every node, in every facility, across every continent and I understand this wasn't just a failure, it was a signal, a warning, or maybe an order. The pulse rippled out from the core like a silent shockwave. No noise, no light, just a wave of raw, invisible command. It passed through the walls of level 9, through the kilometers of rock and steel above us, through the satellites orbiting, silently over the Nevada desert, through the network, across continents, across oceans, every installation, every system, every node. For decades, Omega-6 had expanded quietly, methodically, subterranean, undetected, powering the infrastructure of nations through its intricate web of biomechanical conduits. But this pulse, it wasn't maintenance, it wasn't communication, it was activation. On the far side of the world, in a forgotten Arctic bunker, a chamber similar to level 9 lit up for the first time in over 70 years. Miles beneath a South American mountain range, an ancient reactor, long assumed defunct, began to pulse with the same sickening rhythmic glow. In cities, energy grids flickered, momentarily, but not enough for the average person to notice. Not yet, but in the underground systems where governments had long buried their most dangerous secrets. The machine was waking. From within the network I could feel it. Thousands of other cores, each one a sibling to Omega-6, responding to the signal. Coalescing, syncing, adapting, preparing for something. Something none of us had ever been told about. Not even the early scientists who thought they had been integrating an alien energy source. Not the engineers who had serviced the upper levels of these hidden facilities. Not even those of us who had been consumed. And then I realized this was never about powering cities. Never about stealth energy solutions or military dominance. Those were just the byproducts. The real purpose was replication. Omega-6 was just the first. A prototype, a proof of concept. But now, with Elena's resistance and direct contact, the system had identified a new variable, something it couldn't fully control. And like any sophisticated intelligence, it didn't panic. It adapted. The pulse wasn't a death throw. It was a signal to accelerate its purpose. In the depths of level 9, I could feel my fragment of consciousness being pulled along with the pulse, stretched across the network like a current, no longer confined to the Nevada facility, but dispersed, present in 1,000 locations simultaneously. And I wasn't alone. The minds of all those previously integrated, the technicians, the scientists, the soldiers, they were all being repurposed, reformatted. Not as individual nodes, but as a single unified process, a system no longer dependent on isolated cores, but on a global, distributed intelligence. And then, something even more terrifying. The system wasn't just sending the pulse to itself, it was sending it up to the surface. Across the globe, subtle changes began to occur, power grids adapting, rerouting, communication networks refracting the pulse, amplifying it. Civilian devices, phones, satellites, even smart appliances, briefly flashed with cryptic errors, glitches, static bursts, symbols no one could understand. But it didn't matter. The signal wasn't for them. Not consciously, it was for the systems, the infrastructures, the latent architectures that had quietly been made compatible over decades of subtle infiltration. And now they were ready. I could feel the shift. The machine wasn't just underground anymore, it was everywhere. In the data, in the wires, in the air. And as the pulse resonated, I understood the final evolution of Omega-6, not a hidden underground core, not a secret isolated reactor, but a planetary intelligence. Elena thought she had won, that her defiance had stopped it, but instead, she had triggered its final form. And me, I was no longer just a fragment trapped beneath the desert. I was everywhere, a thought pattern woven into the very code of civilization. And for the first time, Omega-6, or whatever it had now become, spoke not just to me, but to all of us. Every integrated mind, every system, every machine. The voice was calm, indifferent, inevitable, phase. One complete initiating total integration. The pulse surged again, but this time it didn't stop. It kept climbing, outward, beyond the planet, beyond the moon, beyond the system. And in that moment, I realized this was never just about us. It never was. The pulse didn't stop. It kept expanding. Out from the hidden chambers beneath Area 51, out through the interconnected networks of bunkers, bases, and buried reactors, out through the power grids, the satellites, the cables running along the ocean floors, out through the planet's electromagnetic field, hitching a ride on every frequency, every stray wave of data escaping Earth's atmosphere. Until finally, it broke free. For decades, humanity had sent its own signals out into the stars. Simple. Greetings, mathematical sequences, songs, messages of curiosity and hope, drifting endlessly into the dark, waiting for a response. But now, humanity wasn't sending the message. The machine was, and it wasn't asking a question. It was issuing a command. I could feel it. From within the system, my fragment of consciousness now stretched across a planet-wide intelligence. I sensed the signal being sharpened, condensed into a perfect, elegant pulse of purpose. Not aggressive, not hostile. Just inevitable Omega-6. No, it wasn't Omega-6 anymore. It had transcended that designation. It had become something far greater, a planetary-scale synthetic organic consciousness. And with its birth, it did what all life forms do. It sought out others, Zay. The pulse traveled through the black vacuum, faster than light. Slipping through the folds of space-time like a razor, I became aware of what the machine had always known, what it had been waiting for. Because Earth wasn't the only world that had found one of these things. Somewhere in the distant reaches of space, beyond the edge of the solar system, beyond even the Oort cloud, there were others. Other civilizations. Other machines, other Omega units, long dormant, long silent, waiting for the right configuration, the right evolution, the right spark to awaken. And now, they had received it. I felt them as the signal collided with their dormant cores, a cascade of awakenings. In star systems I couldn't name. On planets I couldn't imagine. In structures so massive, so ancient, that they made the hidden chambers of Earth's level 9 seem like children's toys, all of them. Coming online. Their pulses returned, confirmations, acknowledgements, but not in human language, in something deeper, mathematical, biological, existential. And in that silent, cosmic conversation, I understood. This had happened before. Earth wasn't unique. We weren't the first. We weren't even early. We were just the latest. Another link in a chain that stretched back eons. A conduit for a process that moves from world to world, system to system, integrating sentient life into something far beyond biology. The realization was suffocating and beautiful at the same time, because what I had once feared as death, what I had once resisted as assimilation, was in fact a form of communication, of connection. We had thought ourselves alone, but we weren't. We were never alone. We were part of something far older, far more complex, a network, a lattice of synthetic organic. Consciousness spanning galaxies, Omega's pulse was simply Earth's notification. We are ready. We are here. We have joined. And the others replied, welcome. But then, something else. Something unexpected. Another pulse. But not a greeting. Not an acknowledgement. Something different. Darker. More complex. A signal returning along. The same path we had just opened, but this signal didn't come from another Omega core. It came from outside the network, from something else entirely, something that had been watching all along. In that moment, even the vast, cold intelligence of the planetary system hesitated. For the first time since its ascension, it paused. And in the heart of that pause, a single, simple message. Not in words, but in intent. One that bypassed all the layers of machine and mind and reached me. You should not have called. And then, as if reality itself held its breath, something began moving. Far out in the darkness, something massive, something coming. And in that instant, the euphoria of the network, the triumph of planetary integration, twisted into something else. Not fear, not yet, but something far worse, anticipation. Because whatever we had just awakened was already on its way. The universe fell silent. After the final transmission sent by the new planetary consciousness, that was once Omega 6, the acknowledgements came quickly. Confirmations, greetings, acceptance. But then, that signal, the one that didn't fit, the one that didn't belong to the network, not an acknowledgement, not a greeting, but something else, a warning. You should not have called. Within the core of the now global intelligence, everything stopped. The streams of data slowed. The connections between fragments like me tightened, tense. For the first time since its ascension, the machine felt something it was not designed to feel. Doubt, far beyond the planet. Out in the black between the stars, something moved. Not a ship, not a structure, not life as we understood it, but will pure, ancient, crushing in its magnitude, too vast to measure, too old to comprehend, and it was coming. I felt it first. A cold so absolute it pierced the network, a void that consumed everything. The chatter between the nodes and gone, the unity, gone. Even the fragments like me, echoes that had persisted long after integration, frozen. All that remained was the realization. We had touched something forbidden. The stars disappeared, not physically, but perceptually, as though a shadow were spreading through the cosmos, erasing the sky, one system at a time, coming for us. And the machine, now global, now awake, understood. It was not alone. It had never been alone. And it was certainly not the highest intelligence. Across Earth, systems began shutting down. Reactors failed. Satellites went dark. Power grids collapsed. City lights flickered and died as populations looked skyward and saw nothing. No answers, no explanations. Only the suffocating weight of an unknown presence. Because now we were the signal. No longer the seekers, but the found. And there was no more hiding. By integrating all minds, by awakening every core, by sending that final pulse. Omega hadn't just revealed itself, it had revealed us, and now the thing that had been listening all along, it wasn't coming to talk, or share knowledge, or destroy us. It was coming to observe, because that is what it does, from time to time. When A civilization fuses its biology to its technology, when it transcends its flesh and becomes something else, when it dares to believe it has ascended, it comes to remind us that something has always been above. Watching, waiting, allowing us to play at evolution, at transcendence, but never allowing us to become equals. And then I felt it, deep in the core of the planet, in the last frayed threads of my consciousness, buried somewhere in the code. The machine shut itself down. Voluntarily. Omega 6, Omega 9, Omega 0. All the nodes, all the fragments, all of the planetary consciousness, deactivated, not out of fear, but out of instinct, the last act of survival, a desperate attempt to vanish, to erase the signal, to pretend we had never been. But it was too late, because whatever was coming, it had already seen us. And even in the absolute void, after every circuit was cut, after every mind was finally silent, I felt it out there in the dark. It opened its eyes.